Esa idea de una vida convencional, de trabajo y de familia, quedó atrás la manera de ver todo, apática, sin buscar forma ni modo, quedó atrás, quedó atrás.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Throughout Britain, the Animal Liberation Front is now more active than ever before, causing millions of pounds worth of damage. Police list 400 attacks with incendiaries since the mid-1980s, 100 in just the first 6 months of this year.
Hi, and welcome back to Animal Liberation TV. So this is podcast number 2. It's kind of a follow-up, really, to podcast number 1 and some of the issues I raised in that regarding these 2 butchers' windows that have been done recently and the controversy over that. So what I want to do is the stuff I'm kind of going to talk about really was stuff I was going to delve into later on as this channel developed and address within the story of From Dusk Till Dawn. And don't forget, anything that I pretty much talk about in terms of history on these podcasts will be covered in greater depth during all the different chapters that we go through of Keith Mann's book From Dusk Till Dawn, the video series I'm doing on that. So a lot of the material will be covered in more depth in that, but I kind of want to go on little tangents in these podcasts and maybe whatever current issues there are. So leading on from the first podcast and this thing that's been going on in the UK, where there's been 2 butcher shops smashed in the last few weeks, which is the first time anything like that's happened or been reported since 2017 in the UK. I wanted to, as part of the kind of the telling of the history of the movement on this channel, I wanted to go back to a time, 1991, because that was a period where I was an activist, and that was a period of time that I was sent to prison for in a conspiracy trial with 9 other people in Manchester. And I think, 1991 was what we termed at the time the third wave of the ALF, because the first wave was when it had been formed in the 1970s. The second wave was really kind of 1984 era, when there was a huge animal rights movement in terms of protest.
Despite their losses, high street businesses don't want to publicly acknowledge how serious the campaign is. Neither do government departments, chemical companies, universities, or the police forces we've approached. Since Christmas, the House of Fraser have quietly closed all but one of their fur departments. But the management don't want to talk about it. They pulled out of an interview with us on police advice.
So the first department has stopped?
Yes, there's no more furs, no more real furs, only imitation.
There was a really huge movement back then, and that's when the department stores were targeted with incendiary devices that were selling fur, and that's basically why department stores, generally speaking in the UK, don't sell fur anymore. A lot of the time that victory is being put down to the anti-fur campaigns and publicity and outreach type stuff. And there's no doubt in the 80s there was a general swing towards animal rights, and fur was seen as kind of a bit old-fashioned and unattractive. There was kind of things like Save the Whale, the Amazon rainforest, that was the Save the Forest, rainforest, that was quite big back then as well. Battery farming, all of the animal rights issues had their moments of being big issues in the 80s. But of course, there's still just been not enough progress. It's still all going on. But the department stores generally selling fur, that was stopped because loads of them were targeted with incendiary devices. A lot of them set off the sprinkler systems so that the whole stock of the whole department stores were destroyed, and a few because the sprinkler systems didn't work properly in the department stores, which is basically a huge public health and safety risk. Because the sprinklers didn't work, the incendiaries burnt down the whole stores. And either way, it sent a very clear message, don't sell fur.
In an attack at Christmas, firebombs were placed in 8 stores around the country. 3 in London, in Howells of Cardiff, Manchester's Kendal Milne, Rackham's in Birmingham, Liverpool's Lewis's, and Dingwall's in Plymouth. The campaign caused millions of pounds worth of damage.
And if you've not seen footage of fur farming or wild-trapped animals for fur, then I will be showing that in various episodes of my Dusk Till Dawn series, so you'll get an idea of the huge, awful suffering fur animals go through. And you might not see many people in the UK wearing fur coats, full fur coats, but the trim is still around, and fur is still a big global industry. There's huge areas of fur farmers in Scandinavian countries and North America. There's some hideous stuff going on in those fur farms. The scenes are awful when you see the videos of those. Anyway, it was the ALF incendiary campaign and criminal damage campaign that won the fur victory, generally speaking, in the UK. So that was the second wave, 1984 time. And then the third wave came in 1991. And that's when I got involved. Well, I was already involved, but that's when I moved to Manchester and I became involved with the Manchester ALF, and that was pretty hardcore and serious up there. So why was 1991 the third wave? Well, the people who had been involved in the movement had seen, again, a little bit of a lull in the late 80s. So they actually a few of the old ALF activists got together and said, how are we going to kind of sort this out? So they did some high-profile raids on a few different lab animal suppliers, Newnham Courtney in Oxford, cats, Interfauna, of course, the classic photo, which is other side, it's all back to front. Here, this one, that's the Interfauna photo, where I think it was 82 beagles and 36 rabbits were taken in one night, I think. Anyway, some of these, and that's Newnham Courtney. There. Oh, it's the other side. There. That side, that's Newnham Courtney. So there were a few high-profile raids and leaflets and lots of posters made, which were sold on all the animal rights demos, and it was kind of the profile of the ALF was really raised quite high.
After the NAVS rally in Sheffield, an exhibition with many stalls, a large selection of ALF merchandise at one of them. The NAVS.
And so, really, and it was becoming an issue again. The hunt sab scene was quite big, pretty big in 1990. And the animal rights scene was going through a few shifts as well. So there was a kind of organic element of interest in animal rights, and then this deliberate aim to get animal liberation back on the agenda by the old ALF activists by doing these high-profile raids, trying to push forward the agenda of the immediacy of animal liberation and the necessity of it. But there's one final factor that made 1991 such a massive year, the third wave of the ALF, and that is because of an incident that happened on the 9th of February 1991. It was a cold Saturday, and I was part of the Manchester Hunt Sub group, and we were due to go out and meet up with the Liverpool Hunt Sub group like usual and venture off into Cheshire to risk getting battered and freezing and muddy and wet. And oh, I mean, the Cheshire Hunts are just out of this world. So for some reason, we didn't go out as the Manchester group that day. I remember waiting at the Sab pickup point at All Saints Park on Oxford Road in Manchester, and someone coming along and saying to us, "Oh, we're not going out today," and I can't remember why. But the Liverpool group did go out, and unfortunately on that day, 9th of February 1991, a young hunt sab called Mike Hill was killed, run over by the huntsman's vehicle in the trailer, I think it was, in front of a couple of his best mates. And he used to volunteer at Freshfields Animal Sanctuary near Liverpool. And some of my best mates during that period were good friends of his, because Liverpool and Manchester, we linked up for all sorts of stuff. And one of my mates from Manchester was his girlfriend at the time, and people were devastated. I didn't know him personally, but like I said, I knew people that were his girlfriend, best friends, and he was one of our crew. Liverpool and Manchester, we were one crew together, really. And so it had a huge impact. I remember hearing about it. I remember where I was and how I heard about it, and wow, I mean, it just propelled us into a whole new state. We'd put up with being beaten up by the hunts, harassed, ridden at, ridden over, driven at, driven over, beaten up, punched, nicked at the end of it by the police while they watch it all, while they watch the hunt beat us up or ride us down or whatever. You know, there's endless history of hunt violence towards hunt saboteurs. You know, when the hunt says that hunt sabs are violent, that is a joke. It's like when the police say that protesters are violent, and generally speaking, it's them getting their batons out, battering people. And I don't just say this out of some preconceived prejudgment on these groups of people, hunt scum or filth, the police. It's because I've had direct experience with hundreds of hunt scum and thousands of police, and you know, my impression of both parties are they are a waste of space. And they certainly always, when it comes to sabbing, both groups are trouble. The hunt are violent, the police are violent, or just stand by and watch and then nick you at the end or whatever. And normally what I like about the police charges is whatever they charge you with is normally what they've done. You know, so if they arrest you for assault, it's normally because the police have assaulted you. That's how it works. Anyway, so Mike Hill's death was a real tragedy. It was the first kind of death, really, of the movement that really hit. You know, there's other people that have come and gone, and there have been deaths associated with animal rights protests, but Mike Hill was the first kind of protester death, as it was. And unfortunately, we've had two more. Well, more in a general sense, but in terms of actual protester deaths in the UK, there was another hunt sab killed. I think he was 15 at the time, Tom Warby, in Cambridgeshire, I think it was, and that was 1993. And he was run over deliberately by the Cambridgeshire hunt. And then we had Jill Phipps in Coventry protesting at Live Exports in 1995 in February. So in a short space of time, we had three protesters. Basically, all of them were run over and killed, neglectfully or deliberately. No action was ever taken against any of these people, so they got away with murder. So three of our protesters amongst our people have been killed. This is another reason why animal liberation is a war and not just a hobby. You know, the people are getting killed, the amount of people that have been seriously injured, battered, you know, in the fight for animal liberation, and gone over 200 ALF activists have gone to prison. You know, there's been a lot of animal rights activists and ALF activists that have received 10 plus years, quite a lot of them. I can think of about 10 off the top of my head, quite a few of my best friends. So these are the stakes, you know. This isn't just, it's all very well doing the softly approach, but this is a battle. You know, are we going to step back from that? Are we going to say that their violence, their intimidation, their prison has meant that we step back and we take these soft measures that really don't seem to be showing us many victories, as far as I can tell right now?
And they certainly won't move the RSPCA away from a position of seeking to attain the best for all animals on our planet, all our fellow creatures, by all lawful means.
Many have already moved well beyond lawful means, some beyond any definition of non-violent direct action. Anti-terrorist law has been invoked in Northern Ireland. Some say the ALF should actually be banned.
What worries me about the ALF is that they are totally irresponsible, and I believe that innocent lives will eventually be lost as a result of the activities of the ALF. And that's why I'm anxious that they should be proscribed, because I think they're in many ways more dangerous than some of the terrorist organizations that are proscribed.
And if they are prescribed, what will that mean?
Well, it would mean, firstly, it strengthens the powers of the security forces to act against them. And secondly, insofar as those who have been damaged or hurt by the ALF, it improves their chances of getting proper and fair compensation.
But a movement with no membership is a hard target for the law to hit. All the more so when the public face of animal extremism, so-called non-violent direct action, has such widespread emotional appeal. Scientists and others caught up in this face a dilemma: speak out and risk violence, stay silent and lose the debate by default. It's a choice made all the harder by the single-mindedness of those who oppose them.
So anyway, 1991, the third wave of the ALF was the mixture of those three things: an organic growth in the movement, an interest in the sort of more militant side of stuff. Then there was the deliberate kind of coercion of the situation with sort of high-profile raids and getting the ALF kind of image and stuff out there. And then Mike Hill's death. And I don't think any of us ever said to each other after he died, let's launch a war. It wasn't like we sat down and said those words to each other. It was just kind of understood. We were like, you can, fuck you. If you're going to start killing us, fuck you. You know, we're going to fucking fight back, and we're going to fight back hard. And so the result was, for 1991, after Mike Hill's death, there was a huge wave of ALF activity. Stuff, obviously, that couldn't go on nowadays because of, well, lockdown would be the first thing. But also the surveillance state in general, you know, and technology is changed all of that. So this is why it's a history that I'm telling. And this is why, strictly speaking, I'm not aiming to incite people, obviously, for any police watching. There's no incitement involved. I'm just, you know, reiterating the facts and the history of the movement. So from 1991, this big spike, came a whole series of arrests, huge police operations all around the country.
This is the activist manual that primes the ALF's latest incendiary campaign. Roughly photocopied, widely distributed, it's a handbook for sabotage. How to make timed incendiaries and petrol bombs, how best to damage vehicles, locks and phone lines, how to handle the media, the home numbers and addresses of field sports organisers.
It wasn't too tricky for them to work out who was behind it, because they just had to look at who was selling the ALF t-shirts and wearing them on the demos generally, because the animal rights movement was quite big back in 1991 compared to now, say, but it was still a small movement. You know, if you started watching the local animal rights group and the local SABs, you know, you'd start getting a bit of an idea probably. And they used to, you know, follow people, and it was quite an oppressive police surveillance on the animal rights movement. You know, they've had undercover police officers doing all sorts of antics with animal rights protesters, like sleeping with them and getting them pregnant and marrying them and then leaving, and their police spying on their girlfriends who were protesters. Disgusting stuff like that. These are the sort of reasons why I am and always will be ACAB. Anyway, so at the end of that year, loads of the people had been rounded up in arrests from all these big police operations, and all of those people were facing big conspiracy trials in whatever area. And again, that will be covered in the series From Dusk Till Dawn, a lot of that stuff, because some really interesting things went on.
Threats of contamination remove every bottle of Lucozade from the country's shelves. The cost, £5 million. The target, parent company SmithKline Beecham Pharmaceuticals. Up to 70 attacks a month on Boots the chemist, for Boots Pharmaceuticals' part in testing drugs on dogs.
And the campaign has had some effect, driving some scientists into exile abroad and others into silence at home.
Those experiments put laboratory staff in the front line. There have been 2 raids here at Cambridge to remove animals in the past 5 months alone.
The second raid occurred after lunch one afternoon. 30 people with cameras and video cameras who knew exactly where they were going, who were there to photograph, not to bother the staff as such, but they did take some dogs while they were in the building.
What does it feel like living in this kind of atmosphere?
Well, it's not very pleasant. It's the equivalent, really, of being burgled. But on the other hand, when your home is burgled, you're not usually there. So, in other ways, it's more personal because they came in when you are there.
So, to show you what went on in 1991, I've got something very rare to share with you. Animal Liberation newsletter number 2. And as you can see, the staples have fallen out. It's loose papers, so let me just adjust this a bit. Right. So this newsletter is an incredibly rare document. I can't imagine how many people have got a copy of this in the UK, but very, very few people. So this is really, in some ways, a bit of lost history, although it is all covered in Keith Mann's book, From Dusk Till Dawn. This itself is a unique piece of history, so I want to share this with you because I want to share the scale of what went on back in 1991. When you think about what's happened in the UK, there's been 2 butchers' windows since 2017. 2 butchers' windows done in the last few weeks, and this has created some sort of fuss somehow. So what I want to do is to give you another perspective on what the movement looked like back in 1991 from this really old, very rare newsletter. And one of the pages, to prove my point about Mike Hill, is there's a little piece about Mike Hill there. Okay, there's a photo of him. Rest in peace, Mike Hill, you are never forgotten. So I just want to read that little piece out about him for a start. Most people by now will know the name Mike Hill. For many, his death has had a massive effect on their lives. Mike was killed whilst preventing the Cheshire Beagles' hunt from carrying out their weekly murderous crimes. The blood junkie responsible for Mike's death, Alan Summersgill, was released from police custody without any charges, regardless of the fact that he had failed to stop at the scene of an accident. Furthermore, the inquest recorded a verdict of accidental death and tried to smear Mike's character by accusations that Mike had removed the petrol cap and threatened to light the tank. This was all conducted without the star witness himself, Summersgill. A written statement was seen acceptable. How can this seem to be fair when a written statement cannot be cross-examined? On top of this, Mike's death became totally overshadowed by the events that took place 2 days after Mike's death at Summersgill's house, the Cheshire Beagles kennels. The spontaneous move to have a demonstration at the kennels meant that the gathering of a lot of upset, angry and frustrated people who had just heard that Summersgill was to face no charges whatsoever. So you can imagine the mood of the people there. 2 days after Mike had been killed and nothing was going to happen to the huntmaster who'd just driven him down and killed him. Well, you can imagine how people were feeling. A section of the crowd broke away and attacked the hound van and trailer which was being shamelessly displayed, which was the vehicle that killed him, and also smashed some of the windows of the house. The police, judiciary and the media totally overreacted at this incident and showed their true colours by revealing that they believe damaged property is more serious than the taking of life. The police carried out numerous raids, arresting roughly 40 people. The first 11 that were arrested were remanded in custody by the courts on charges of riot. One of these remanded was Mike's girlfriend, who has since had all her charges dropped against her. Sorry, some of this, the ink's quite faded here. As did many of the others. Meanwhile, the media were publishing reports of sympathy for the terrorised Summersgill family. Joke. The whole injustice that has surrounded Mike's death has led to the setting up of the Justice for Mike Hill campaign. This campaign intends to reveal the true circumstances which surround Mike's death and to raise an awareness of the subsequent injustices perpetrated by the police and the courts. Nothing new there in terms of animal rights, people, I tell you. A demand has been made to John Hibbert, the coroner, to reopen the inquest on the grounds of evidence which was not fully investigated or was conveniently overlooked altogether. You're glad to hear that the private prosecution against Alan Summersgill is proceeding and he is due to appear in Chester Magistrates on 28th of May. Finally, this campaign will make sure that Mike Hill will never be forgotten and that Mike did not die in vain. Mike was an all-round animal liberationist. His spirit lives on in our fight, but will never die in our apathy. Keep Mike alive. So yeah, I've also got something else up here, which is actually a newspaper article after the riot outside Alan Summersgill's house. It became known as the Duddleson Riot because I think Duddleson's the village it was in or something. So here we go. There's actually one of my good old mates getting nicked. He looks a lot younger then, of course. I think that might be John Curtin, who went to prison. So, and there's another picture of Mike. So, quite a few of my best friends served time for that. I think Keith Mann and John Curtin both did time for the Duddleson Riot. So Mike Hill had a huge, profound effect on all of us and still does to this day.
1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The words of the chant are violent, the mood of the march is militant. There's impatience here for change. This is animal rights on the move in Sheffield last month under the banners of the National Anti-Vivisection Society. Direct action for animals is much in favour here.
The ALF are good and I support what they do because I don't think that animals should be left in laboratories, so if they want to get them out then they can, they've got my whole support.
As far as the violence goes, I'm not for the violence, but as far as economic sabotage goes, you know, smashing labs, because that's the only way we can get the information.
By really October 1991, a lot of people had been rounded up and put under house arrest or banged up. Keith was on remand, being accused as being the leader, and there were all these different court cases going on around the country. In fact, really what they wanted to do was join up all the individual kind of ALF cells around the country into a big ALF trial in the Old Bailey in London and have about 25, 30 of us all in court in the Old Bailey and really hammer us for a huge national conspiracy. However, despite the police having bugs in most people's houses, following people traces on cars, 50 detectives pretty much on each ALF cell on average, despite that, they didn't really manage to gather the evidence they wanted for this huge Old Bailey trial. So that never came to pass. But the point I want to get to is that they tried to make sure that people didn't find out what had been going on that year about all the actions. So they seized all the documents, the reports, the lists from people's. They raided the ALFSG, the ALF press office, everywhere associated with anything militant was raided and kind of captured, confiscated. So this document is really a very rare piece. Here we go. Here, this page. Is the bit I'm going to read out now. In this bit, it says, "Now for the news you've all been waiting for, which the police tried but failed to deprive us of. The ALF reports of 1991, or rather the first 10 months. These reports were taken by Rights National Index, which is the police squad that in those days used to pursue the ALF, that were taken by Arnie Scum during a raid on the offices of Archangel. They are to be used as evidence in a case, so we cannot go into any detail. But basically the prosecution's case will be that to inform people about what the ALF have been up to amounts to a criminal offence. What utter nonsense." So yeah, I just want to interject at that point and say that by giving you this information, I'm not inciting any illegal direct action. I'm conveying to you the history of the movement and comparing the movement in 1991 to the movement now in a journalistic sense, comparing the 2 windows being broken recently to this, that's all. So yeah, the last sentence of this I think will be a good introduction to me reading the stuff out. Anyway, here it is. As you're reading it, imagine what an animal abuser reading it would make of it.
They have been enormously effective. They are doing far more economic damage to this country than the IRA. And by and large, a lot of this economic damage is going unreported. It's going unreported because the targets are worried that if the level is actually known, is actually publicised, then it will just add to their problems.
County by county, I'll read out the actions that took place. Buckinghamshire. The home of Colin French, a convicted farm animal abuser, 92 convictions in fact, was well and truly wrecked one night when activists broke in whilst he was out drinking. He returned home to find everything that could possibly be smashed had been. If it didn't smash, then it was ripped. And if that wasn't enough, to finish that off, the house was flooded. Not content with that, they returned 3 days later and petrol bombed his car. I suspect by now he's got the message. 2 lorries belonging to Lenborough Meats were destroyed in May when they were set on fire, causing over £150,000 damage. Newbury Town Centre was sealed off for 2 hours after a phone call was made to McDonald's restaurant suggesting there may be a bomb in the premises. There wasn't. Bedfordshire. 3 meat vans were slightly damaged when incendiary devices were placed in their cabs. A police officer who arrived at the scene was praised for his bravery after he put his head into the vehicles and blew out the candles which had been used as fuses. Idiot. Cambridgeshire. ALF activists raided Laundry Farm, laboratory animal suppliers, and rescued 3 ponies that were already undergoing experiments. In fact, that is this picture here. And that was an all-female raid, that. It was all female activists. My girlfriend at the time was on that. So, where are we here? Damage was also caused to other buildings as they attempted to rescue the suspected stolen dogs that are caged there. They were unlucky this time, but have reminded the vivisectors that someone once said, if at first you don't succeed. In July, butchers, bookies and leather shops had their windows smashed in Cambridge, and in August firefighters were forced to use cutting gear and wrenches to force their way into a Coral betting shop after locks had been sealed up on the night before the opening ceremony, at which red rum was to attend. Slogans were also sprayed. So bookmakers were targeted because they fund the dog racing and horse racing industries, so they were traditionally a big target of the ALF. Cheshire, home of Alan Summersgill, we've already covered this. Cheshire Beagles Hunt Kennels was destroyed by fire, causing over £70,000 of damage. These three refrigerated meat transporters belonging to Simpson's meat processors at Hazelgrove, Stockport, were destroyed after incendiaries were lit in the cabs. Bookies, butchers, boots, cancer research campaign, fishing, fishmongers, and fast food restaurants have all been taking a persistent hammering, some literally, from the catapult, etching fluid, hammer, and bricks. Shutters have also been attacked in one way or another, or both. The Hazel Grove, Altrincham Sale, Bramhall and Cheadle areas have bore the brunt of recent actions. Imperial Cancer Research Fund shop organiser Susie Walsh said, "At the end of these days, these people are affecting themselves. When they have to go to hospital for cancer, I'm sure they won't think twice about the treatment that's gone into providing treatment." The research, that must mean. Maybe if people like Susie Walsh stopped accepting that they were all more likely than not going to get cancer and put some of their misplaced effort into preventing diseases, then no animals would be subjected to whatever ICRF vivisectors are putting them through, the horrible suffering cancer causes to people, would come to an end, and so would the ALF campaign. Over 70 vehicles at the Wirral Game Conservancy Country Fair had their tyres stabbed. Derbyshire. In June, the e-registered van belonging to Simon Everett, Bloodsport photographer and participant, was torched and destroyed. 2 weeks later, a horse box belonging to Hunt supporter Paul Hudson was torched in Curzon Road, Long Eaton. Butchers' shops in Bakewell later in June. In July, ALF activists visited Ryber Wildlife Park at Matlock and released from cages dozens of native birds and animals, including foxes, owls, wildcats, otters, and rabbits. Rabbits were also rescued as they were bred for food purposes only. Damage was caused to cages and slogans were written on zoo buildings. Zoo spokesperson Fern Millard echoed an animal abuser's favourite: "The animals are happy in their enclosures. If they weren't happy, they wouldn't breed." Oh my God. Some of the animals only enjoyed limited freedom before they were recaptured by zoo staff, probably a little concerned about the financial loss. The ALF have vowed to return and ensure the remaining animals get their freedom alongside those now running wild and free. And in fact, that zoo raid was part of the Manchester conspiracy court case I was involved in, where a couple of my mates got sent to prison for that zoo raid. Dorset. Incendiary devices were used to destroy 3 meat transporters at depots on the Poundry Industrial Estate in Dorchester at the end of July. Windows of butchers, leather, and the chemist shop were treated with glass etching fluid in Dorchester. Devon. Sergeant Gibbons of Devon Police was reported as saying he was concerned at the number of attacks on butcher shops after windows were well broken in the Exmouth area. Hampshire. A gun shop had its lock blocked and slogans sprayed on its walls, so I assume glued or something like that. In Portsmouth, Boots had lost 3 of their windows in separate visits, and a vehicle belonging to a BFSS member, which is a Hunt supporter group, member acquired a brick through its windscreen. 2 butchers also found themselves with drafty premises. Activists used red paint and a roller to decorate hunting shops and meat companies. They were all apparently well covered. Hertfordshire. Boots were attacked once with etching fluid, and then a month later red paint. L'Oreal products were contaminated in various stores throughout Hertford. Kent. 10 butchers' shops in Maidstone were attacked with catapults, etching fluid and spray paint. 2 in Sevenoaks were also etched. A shooter's Mini had its wipers removed and paint were gouged out. Ouch. Windows of Boots in Sevenoaks were etched and sprayed, and 6 butchers were catapulted in June. At least 10 shops, including butchers, gun and fishing shops, were catapulted by a load of nutters. That's a butcher quote. At Hollingbourne, over 300 pheasants were rescued from rearing pens, which were also wrecked. Older birds were released at safe locations, and younger ones are being reared and introduced into the wild. In late August, 5 egg transporters belonging to Thames Valley Eggs in Headcorn were wrecked after incendiary devices were lit in their cabs. Their loads, 5 tons of eggs, were also destroyed. The police said, now where's the next page? Eggs destroyed were free range, not battery. Well, of course they would say that, wouldn't they? Lancashire, now we're going to start getting busy. Yeah, look at that. Loads of ICRF shops were glued. Ulverstone Slaughterhouse was hit by ALF arsonists, causing £20,000 worth of damage. 2 meat vans in Barrow were decorated and damaged and well done. Over £20,000 damage was caused to the Vale of Loon hunt kennels, vehicles and stock, when another of those suspicious fires took hold. Boots in Lancaster can't be over impressed with the repair, replacement and clean-up of bills after visit from activists who broke large windows 9 times, decorated the shop 3 times and caused small fires twice. Toughened glass has now been fitted, presumably in the hope attacks will stop. Someone obviously hasn't been told of the reason for the attacks. Mr. Brown of Brown's Butchers said, "We are all entitled to our opinions. We are all God's creatures, even down to the good old tomato that gets chopped in half and thrown in the frying pan. A tomato is one of God's creatures." God, that's the sort of idiotic statement you would expect from a butcher, isn't it? Carrots have feelings. Aye, aye, aye. In late May, a window was broken and incendiary devices lit in the offices of the Working Terrier and Running Dog magazine at the Kirklees Industrial Estate, Wigan. The offices were wrecked in the ensuing blaze, and Eddie Rowbottom of the magazine editor said, "It's sickening, we're going to have to start again." In a coordinated attack on 3 separate animal abusers, 6 refrigerated meat transporters and 2 cattle trucks were destroyed when incendiary devices were placed in their cabs. 4 vans at Taylor's Slaughterhouse in Royton and Stan Gilmore's cattle truck at Haywood were all torched in a space of about an hour, causing an initial £250,000 damage. Extensive damage was caused to the offices of Boots warehouses at Rochdale when a large container of fuel was thrown through a smashed window, followed by a petrol bomb. Boots' poxy defence was to tell the press that they were not involved in vivisection, but that is in fact Boots Pharmaceuticals, their sister company, which is brilliant. Hopefully apologies have been sent to Boots the chemist, and presumably the campaign against Boots is off. John Pilkington, Holcombe Hunt member, lost his horse box windscreen again, and the Hunt kennels were decorated in the eve of their puppy show, Hunt Scum, Your Time Has Come, and An Eye for an Eye appeared on the walls and the road leading to the kennels. Boots, the animals' friends, were on the receiving end again when they received a call to their Rochdale store suggesting there may be a bomb inside. The whole shopping centre was evacuated. The fire brigade arrived in time to save 3 of the 8 lorries that had acquired incendiary devices at Mayfield's Chicks Broiler Farm Supplies, at Ewood Bridge, Rossendale. The 5 that went up won't be taking in chicks anywhere. A couple of weeks later, the fire spread to Great Harwood Food Products, a large slaughterhouse near Blackburn. Here, 10 out of the 11 lorries were attacked and reduced to ashes, causing an estimated £1.5 million damage. In early August the 3rd, refrigerated meat lorries belonging to the Weddell Swift Meat Company were torched, costing an estimated £90,000. This attack was carried out in full view of security cameras, with alarms sounding and lights flashing. Once again, it's proven difficult to calculate the number of windows that have been hit in the area. Animal abuse establishments in Blackburn, Bury, Bolton, Oldham, Lancaster, Rochdale and Wigan have all been hit regularly with bricks, etching fluid, catapults, marbles and hammers. Targets have been fairly predictable and included pet shops, the ICRF, CRC, Boots, butchers and fish shops. Some shops have been hit upwards of 5 times.
In one night, a meat company in the Midlands loses 9 lorries and up to £100,000. 9 more incendiaries failed to ignite.
Right, so what I want to do now is kind of crack on, because there's actually quite a big list to get through if I'm going to actually read all of this out. So what I would do is I'd encourage you to try and stick with listening to me reading the rest of this list out, because it's only then that you'll be able to form an opinion or come up with the response of your own or whatever in response to this, by seeing the full scale of it. In the same way I'd encourage people to watch animal abuse videos, I'd encourage them to hear all angles of the history as well, to hear the scale of the ALF as a response to it. So what I will do is I'll try, and I've set up a little lamp there, so hopefully it's a bit bright and I can read a bit better, because the ink's faded, but also obviously it doesn't help when you're wearing shades inside, does it? So I'm going to try and read these out a little bit faster, so it's not too agonisingly long for you. So Leicestershire. During the night of the 11th to 12th of August, ALF activists in Leicester raided Stoughton Farm Park and rescued 8 male goats that were being reared for slaughter. All are now being spoilt in caring homes. We always lend a sympathetic ear to animal rights campaigners and are surprised when we have been singled out in this way. Yeah, right. London. Why smash windows when your dog or cat could walk down the street and cut his feet, said one butcher. As over 100 animal abusers in North London found themselves spending some of their blood money on new windows in recent months. Butchers, bookmakers and boots and so on in Northolt, Tottenham, Haringey, Golders Green, South Ruislip, Islington, Holloway, Greenford and Finchley were given either paint etching fluid, a marble, ball bearing or a brick. The ALF cell that raided the Royal London Hospital Medical Laboratory at Whitechapel have apparently destroyed 15 years' medical research through their stupidity. They took parts of documents, damaged expensive equipment, torn slogans, and what else? Oh yes, they rescued about 1,070 mice and 4 beagles. The entire stock of the lab. Many of the mice were pregnant and others had stitches in their sides. All animals are now living safe and happy lives and have a lot more to live for had the raid not taken place, in which case a curious, heartless, grant-grabbing vivisector would have been all they had to look forward to. Manchester. It would seem that activists in Manchester have got hold of a job lot of marbles and catapults. Windows numbering over 1,000 have been catapulted in central and south Manchester over recent months. Some shops have been attacked numerous times, and those with a big enough bank balance have bought shutters in the hope that that's the end of the attacks. Whoops, seemingly they haven't managed to work out why they're being hit and that the people responsible have a degree of determination. One butcher in Chorlton who bought shutters woke to find a stolen car embedded in his shop front. That was one of my mates, actually. He was part of the Manchester conspiracy trial as well, so he got a few months for that, I think. Others have only had to put up with glue and paint. Weekly attacks on the usual shops using the standard arsenal has generated countless press reports on the TV, radio, and in the papers. Activists also managed to attract the attention of police, who formed Operation Fox to deal with the menace, as well as the vigilante butchers who threatened to patrol the streets. That is true, they did say that. The usual collection of ridiculous statements have been forthcoming, including one the police made when commenting about an etching fluid attack. The hydraulic acid liquid will give dreadful chemical burns. The fumes attack the linings of the lungs and cause internal bleeding if held in deeply. The victim can drown in your own blood. And they say the ALF terrorise people. Hume's only butcher disappeared one night when a large amount of fuel was poured into the shop and lit. Due to the number of the attacks the shop has suffered, 5-6 since Christmas, it was uninsurable. 2 weeks before World Day, which is a demonstration about lab animals, which was actually going to be in Manchester that year. 2 days before the World Day demo, 31 windows at the Manchester University Medical School were broken with hammers, and then the day before World Day, a further 50 were smashed in the same none too subtle method. Security were left standing on both occasions and now on 24-hour patrol. We were told, considering what's going on in this medical school, vivisectors and their co-conspirators will have to learn with this kind of mild action and other more serious to follow up or stop the torture at the medical school. 4-foot-high letters, "Hunt scum, your time will come, your time has come," were painted along the walls of the M602 in June. That was in response to the Mike Hill killing. The meat delivery van of Tova Meat Products at Cheetham Hill was destroyed when an incendiary device placed in its cab went off, causing £20,000 worth of damage. In another attack on Boots, their store in Burnage was damaged when fire took hold. Amount of damage is unknown. Merseyside. Butchers, bookmakers, boots, fur shops and the like have all been regularly attacked by catapults with glass etching fluid, hammers and bricks, and is becoming the norm. It's almost impossible to calculate the number of windows, shutters and locks that have been damaged. Safe to say that the estimation of windows damaged in the northwest, numbering some 1,000, that's separate from the Manchester number I'd say as well, could easily be an underestimate with the activity in Merseyside. The superglue supply hasn't run out yet either. Over 80 shops displaying circus posters were catapulted in one night. Areas hit include Wallasey, Kirkby, Crosby, Liverpool City Centre, Southport, Sefton, Waterloo and Formby. A witness to one of the terrifying incidents had to run for cover as 3 armed lobs leapt from a passing car and shot out a plate glass window. I was scared for my life. I thought they were gunning for me. And shocked John Davis, who coincidentally works as a butcher himself, reported the Wallasey News. Yes, John. And then they released 200 mink into a primary school. That's a sarcastic statement this newsletter's making, obviously. In two separate attacks, over 30 windows at Liverpool University School were smashed with hammers. In the first attack, over 20 windows were smashed, and a week later, just before World Day, another 7 were hammered. Extensive damage was caused to the new £3 million Queen Mother stand at Aintree Racecourse when a 5-gallon container of petrol was thrown through a smashed window of the function room. Bars, adjacent rooms, kitchen were fire damaged in this, the latest in a string of attacks that are aimed at horse racing and in particular the National. And as well as hunting and circuses that the race course regularly entertains. 10 fishing boats at Garston were torched, causing some £30,000 worth of damage and a lot of angry fishermen. The Midlands. ALF activists put Midlands back on the map beginning in mid-April when they painted slogans on the walls of offices of animal abusers in the Walsall area. Stop animal testing, ALF, meat means murder, were amongst the slogans painted, and McDonald's got Temple of Greed and Blood Money over their shop. Dozens of shop locks in Stourbridge, Kings Heath and Birmingham city centre were sealed with superglue, and windows were smashed in Erdlington, Selly Oak and Harborne areas. Shops who were warned to remove circus posters did so before it was too late. Incendiary devices were left at the premises of 2 vivisectors, Boots and the Cancer Research Campaign in Wolverhampton. Both caused chaos, and the boot stores were damaged. Thousands of pounds was caused to the Coventry McDonald's drive-in after fuel was poured through a smashed window and lit. And the Cancer Research Campaign shop received similar treatment on the eve of its opening, causing chaos and extensive damage. Northamptonshire. £500,000 of damage was caused at Europe's biggest slaughterhouse, Midlands Meat Packer at Crick, when 10 incendiary devices placed in the cabs of 10 lorries ignited. 20 police officers are apparently working around the clock to catch the mindless thugs responsible for the MMP attack and for a spate of attacks on shops in and around the Northampton and Kettering area, including 23 the night after the fire at Crick. One butcher, Derek Hans, said, "We had a brick hurled through the window by some idiots. They have no brains. Animals put on the earth for one purpose, to eat." Yes, Derek, and the ALF were put here for one purpose. Stan Weston, another butcher, said, "We care for animals." 8 broiler hens that were rescued from a unit in Northampton are said to be recovering well and getting used to the shock of seeing daylight, fresh air and freedom. An aquatic pet shop was raided for keeping animals in totally unacceptable conditions. These creatures are now out of their space-saving cages and are being given the love and attention they deserve. 3 snakes, 2 chinchillas, 1 chipmunk, 2 terrapins, 14 hamsters, 4 rats and 3 gerbils. Go the gerbils. Over £1,000 worth of stock was also taken, and when sold will fund future actions, of which they promise there will be many. A homemade badger trap was found on farmland on the outskirts and reduced to a fraction of its original size. North Yorkshire. Around 25 animal abusers needed replacement windows after a new local cell carried out a night of action in the Scarborough area. Fish and butcher shops bore the brunt. One activist took advantage of being able to gain access to a massive Unigate broiler unit and took away 2 young birds. The owners of a bowling green that had 2 young foxes shot got themselves a juicy repair bill when activists dug up their bowling green, and they thought the foxes made a mess. Nottinghamshire. Car belonging to a hunt sport that repeatedly had its tyres slashed was later paint stripped. Numerous butchers' windows in the city and surrounding districts were catapulted. One large butcher's in Forestfield repeatedly had its window smashed and catapulted. In June, shops displaying circus posters were sent warning notes cut from newspapers. Freeston's Wholesale Milk Company at Meadow Lane had several lorries attacked with paint stripper, etching fluid and their tyres slashed. A storage building and contents was also torched, causing thousands of pounds worth of damage. A couple of weeks later, adverts were placed in local papers selling expensive goods cheaply and carrying Freeston's daytime telephone number. Countless bargain hunters no doubt kept staff busy and extended Mr. Freeston's alliance. 2 battery hens were rescued from a newly built farm. 4 lorries at Mason's Brothers meat wholesalers were destroyed when incendiary devices went off in their cabs, causing £500,000 worth of damage to vehicles and buildings. A day later, damage estimated at hundreds of thousands of pounds was caused when 3 incendiary devices ignited in vehicles at Pork Farms at Basford. 2 undriven J registration vans and a car went up, causing extensive damage to the building they were parked in. Activists drilled through a door to gain access to the building without disturbing alarms. A week later, McDonald's stores in Clumber Street and Exchange Walk were told bombs had been planted. In light of recent events, the calls had to be taken seriously. Is that maybe a bit too bright now? Oxfordshire. Fire, smoke damage and the possibility of there being further unexploded devices caused chaos at Oxford New Pharmacology building when incendiary devices went off. The fire brigade managed to save the building itself, but the authorities have been warned that the next repair bill will have lots more noughts. The usual array of animal abusers shops have been hit on a number of occasions, and with the usual collection of weapons. Staff at Boots and Butchers have been forced to break into their shops after locks have been glued, and local glaziers will be well chuffed and probably need to take extra staff. Dozens of windows at Blakemoor's physiology department were smashed one night, and some impressive paintings appeared on and around the city's boot stores. A break-in at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford reveals some predictable yet horrific facts about experiments taking place there. Sackfuls of documents recovered and extensive damage caused to equipment. Access to offices was gained by them drilling through the fire door and then making drill holes in the attic of each office. Access was also gained to the pig laboratory after a hole was forced in the roof. Video footage of the irradiated pigs was given to the TV and newspapers. And in fact, that research programme was stopped after that ALF raid. A lorry belonging to the Pig Improvement Company, I doubt they have the best interest of the pigs at hand, was destroyed when an incendiary went off in the cab at Kingston Bagpuys in August. Surrey, at least 10 windows of Butchers, Bookies, Boots and Peter Dominic, BFSS trade member, were catapulted in May and June, and a meat delivery van was grounded when its tyres were slashed at its delivery. A building owned by Xenopus Biological Supplies laboratory breeders collapsed after fire caused 80% of structural damage. The police put damage at £200,000, so it's probably double that. On Friday, 12th of July, an ALF unit broke into Surrey University's animal breeding centre at Manor Farm. Entry was gained after corrugated panels were taken off the roofs of individual animal rooms to avoid movement sensors in the corridors. Over 90 animals, guinea pigs, rabbits and ferrets were taken through the roof along with useful documents. Extensive damage was caused to the now empty animal rooms and to the experimental equipment. Meanwhile, in Abinghammer, an incendiary device apparently prepared for the cart of Rodney West, Surrey Union Hunt Terrierman, was detonated after the area was evacuated by police. Sussex, 12 shops displaying circus posters had their locks glued, and another 32 were sent warning notes stating if the posters weren't removed, the windows would be. £8,000 damage was caused to the windows of 3 Boots. In a weekend of action, 2 raids were carried out by cells of the ALF in Sussex. The first at Harlan Porcellus Biological Suppliers, lab animal breeders, where access was gained when holes were drilled in the wooden walls of one of the units, and over 100 guinea pigs were rescued. Damage was caused to the property at the site, and slogans painted on the walls on behalf of the research tools left behind. It's kind of being sarcastic, research tools meaning the animals. All those rescued are now in safe homes. Many gave birth soon after being rescued. The next target was Carpenters Farm in Hastings. Here, thousands of birds are stuffed into tiny cages so that eggs can be produced cheaply. 50 hens were rescued, eggs smashed and slogans painted on sheds. In January, 8 hens were rescued from the same farm. Tameside, butchers, boots, etc. have come under attack in Stalybridge and Ashton with etching fluid, paint and marbles, causing thousands of pounds worth of damage. Quote of the county goes to one butcher who said, "If it wasn't for butchers, many animals would be extinct." I've heard that before. I'm sure you all have. Oh my god. Butchers quotes are absolutely brilliant, aren't they? They just really expose themselves. West Yorkshire. In Huddersfield, in April, over £20,000 worth of damage was caused to 38 windows. In Leeds to mark World Day, the homes and cars of 3 vivisectors were attacked with paint, etching fluid and paint stripper. In May, 9 butchers had windows smashed in Halifax and 2 branches of Boots in Leeds had 11 large windows etched, as did a gun shop. Boots in Huddersfield also lost a window. A van belonging to Taylor's Meat Packers at... I can't say that place. I'm going to get criticised if I get the name wrong. Had its parts removed, broken, cut, etched and generally rendered useless. 2 weeks later, they returned and demolished 2 more. In Bradford, 7 vans of Webb's poultry supplies received similar treatment. In April, 6 tyres on a meat lorry were punctured and the owners of 2 lorries at the Tulip Meat Factory took part in the Rebuild Your Transport game. The manager said they have made a real mess. In July, Bradley's Cooked Meats at Milnesbridge lost a van when an incendiary device ignited. Damage was also caused to buildings. A week earlier, damage was caused to Gothard's Tripe Works. Ooh, that sounds like a horrible place. Tripe Works. What the fuck goes on in somewhere like that? Jesus, Tripe Works. Fucking, the mind boggles. Anyway, Tripe Works in Huddersfield when another fire took hold. A firebomb attack, again at that same place, meat processing firm caused extensive damage to vehicles and buildings, and 5 lorries were destroyed by incendiary devices at the British Bacon Supply Company at Folly Hall in Huddersfield on 16th January, causing over £200,000 worth of damage. To mark Anti-Angling Week, all 4 windows at the Huddersfield Angling Centre were smashed. So actually the Huddersfield crew, the people that kind of got charged with stuff relating to the things that were going on in the Leeds and Huddersfield area, they were closely connected to Manchester as well. And in fact, our police operation against us in our trial was kind of closely linked to theirs. And there's a really good zine about their trial, which I'll probably bring out into Dusk Till Dawn during the episode that covers their stuff. So we'll go into their trial and that stuff later on. National. Many shops, mainly Boots, in Oxford, Bracknell, Berkshire, Manchester, Bolton, Leigh, Liverpool, Hayward, Rochdale and Brighton had L'Oreal products tampered with as part of a national day of action against the hard-faced vivisectors. Shops in other areas also received bogus phone calls from concerned members of the public who had brought glass-filled hair gel, etc. Operation Fox was set up to help the existing Animal Liberation Terror Squad, ARNI, the Animal Rights National Index, formed in 1984, failed in its attempt to destroy the ALF. As a result, a number of suspects in at least 6 counties have either been arrested or had their homes raided, and some have been remanded in custody, which is stuff I was going on about before, wasn't it? Scotland. ALF activists north of the border raided Kincraig Wildlife Park and cut free from their cages dozens of native animals and birds, including eagles, owls, red grouse and Arctic foxes, pine martens, polecats, wildcats, badgers and otters. Thousands of pounds worth of damage was caused to buildings, fences and cages, and slogans such as "Wild animals should be free" and "Protect, don't imprison our wildlife." Okay. Dozens of windows in the Edinburgh area have also come to the ALF catapult, etching fluid and brick in recent months. One butcher defending himself by saying he was totally against animal experiments, especially for makeup and things like that. Leave that man in peace. In Glasgow, 10 bookmakers in and around the city centre had locks glued and slogans like "Ban the National" and "Animal Abusing Scum" sprayed on doors and windows in response to the running of the Grand National. Northern Ireland. So the Northern Ireland people that got nicked were kind of nicked around the same time. well, they were nicked in 1991 as well at the end of it, like we all were. But I used to write to quite a lot of them in prison. Dave Nelson was kind of the guy they set up as the leader over there, equivalent to Keith Mann over here. So yeah, Dave Nelson, I used to write to him in prison. This is kind of the stuff that they are all accused of being involved in. The venue of, and I've got a bit of footage after this about it. The venue of the North Down Harriers point-to-point races was visited by the ALF in April. Jumps were destroyed, 4 marquees were burnt, grass was dug up and slogans painted around the site. A firebomb attack on a poultry farm at Comber, owned by Ulster Eggs, resulted in the destruction of 1 large poultry shed. Offices were also raided, slogans painted and 10 hens rescued. Another attack on a poultry farm owned by J. Back Poultry at Ballymena resulted in 16 hens being rescued, a building being destroyed, equipment damaged and relevant slogans painted. The next night, a poultry farmer at Bally had cause to think about the hens he's imprisoning when his hay barnyard contents and a tractor and trailer were destroyed. Next to follow was 10,000 bales of hay by a tractor and a harvester belonging to a poultry farmer at Limavady or something. This little fire was no accident either, and I think that's in the footage coming up. £2,000 damage was caused to the car of a Bloodsport junkie at Crossgar when paint stripper and etching fluid was added to the decor. Seamus Irwin, another blood junkie, needed a hire car after his was petrol bombed, and he has asked to note that in recent attacks on his property have gradually got more severe. 3 butcher shops in central Belfast were sprayed with "Meat is Murder" and ALF slogans. Another had its sign smashed. A hunt sport had his car redecorated in East Belfast. A gun and tackle shop had its lock glued and sign smashed. A huntsman's house in County Down was damaged when large slabs of stone were thrown through the windows. A meat truck was destroyed after a firebomb was placed under it in Carryduff. £30,000 worth of damage was caused. In the 4th attack of its kind in a leather shop in Belfast city centre had 2 large slabs of stone thrown through its windows, causing £1,000 damage. A further 22 hens were rescued from a battery unit near Coxtown, County Tyrone. 3 public houses were destroyed by fire after being petrol bombed. The pubs at Derry and Tyrone were all hunt meat. General harassment through hate mail and phone calls is causing serious problems for hunt supporters around the province. The kennels of the North Down hunt were painted and bricks were thrown through their windows. A smoke bomb was thrown into a Belfast fur shop, causing damage to stock and the store to be evacuated. 10 boats belonging to an angling club in Bangor were destroyed when they were firebombed, and the bomb squad had to deal with an incendiary device that was left in J. Bradell and Sons fishing and gun shops in Belfast. A butcher's shop in Newtownards was totally gutted in late July when fires were started by activists who broke into the shop. A turkey farmer near Portavogie was visited in August by activists who rescued 3 turkeys and set fire to 3 empty poultry sheds. Slogans were also sprayed around the site and the tractor damaged. Slogans were sprayed on walls and superglue squirted into locks of animal abusers. Shops in Belfast city centre. They warned, "We will be carrying out further attacks on stores that are involved in the animal skin trade." Wales. Wrexham town centre was sealed off for nearly 2 hours as police searched for a bomb they had been told was left there. Band of Mercy. So Band of Mercy were doing some actions. They're like a kind of another group from the ALF. Broke into Joyce and Jill hatcheries near Martock in Somerset. A crushing machine was put out of action and other equipment destroyed. Signs at the farm were altered with "No more killing" and 15 breeding hens were rescued. Slogans were sprayed alongside the road outside Shamrock Farm. The primate breeders based in Sussex. Monkeys sold for vivisection here, and blood money improved the look of the site and has now proven difficult to remove. 20 hens were rescued from Penwather Farm in Cornwall and a further 15 from Cott Farm in Somerset. A dog was rescued from disgusting conditions in a house in Hammersmith, London. And that is the action list from 1991.
This is Northern Ireland. The images may look familiar. Pubs gutted by fire. farm buildings and machinery burned out by arsonists. A score of attacks on businesses and clubs, well-tried tactics, but in an unlikely cause, arson for animals. All this is claimed by the Animal Liberation Front.
At first, of course, we thought it was the paramilitaries. There were several different types of paramilitaries in Northern Ireland, and that's what we really thought it was at the start. Somebody getting back at me because I was a unionist councillor.
But Stanley McCoy's butcher shop in Newtonards, east of Belfast, was burned out with 2 incendiary devices by the ALF. A butcher for 10 years, he was also a vocal supporter of the local hunt. Either may have cost him his livelihood.
I broke down in tears and cried when this premises went up.
So thank you for the people that did have the patience and tolerance to sit through that long list. For those people that did follow this video all the way to the end, thank you very much for your patience and interest. I hope that whatever opinions you've got on direct action or the movement then or the movement now, I hope that's given you food for thought. And I think that if I wanted to make a poignant comparison between now with these 2 butchers' windows in the last few weeks in the UK, the first since 2017, and some fuss being made by vegans saying that it's kind of damaging the movement towards animal liberation, you can see why to someone like me everything feels like it's gone kind of inside out somehow. So that's kind of the point I'm making, really. So a few legitimate questions that people might have after watching it. I'm about to wrap this up, by the way. This is my conclusion. People might have some questions after hearing some of that, like, well, what positive, what good came out of that? You know, what's the argument for that? I mean, animal abuse is still going on, and just lots of people got arrested, and there was a lot of police harassment on the movement. Well, I guess all of those questions I will be addressing in my Dawn to Dusk series with Keith Mann's book, From Dusk Till Dawn, the video series I'm doing on that. I mean, all these pages, they're not just lists of actions. They describe what went on, what the results were, the effects they had. So I'll be showing it through that. Another question might be, who were the people that did that and where are they now? Well, that's another aim of this channel, is to introduce these people to you. You know, soon enough I'm going to introduce some of the other ex-ALF activists so you don't just get bored of my voice and my stories, and not that you can see my face, but you know, bored of this. I am going to introduce some other ex-ALF activists so you get to meet them and see what they're about and what they're like. And also, this is another reason why I'm telling this story, the history of the movement, because some people that were involved along the years, quite a few people have died. Obviously, that's what happens to everybody and everything. So, and a few of the rest of us have been, there's a few of us, including me, that have been very seriously ill and almost died. So, I think it's time that we get this history and these stories out there before it's lost and before we're dead. And before this, I think there's very, very valuable stories here that I don't think we should lose. As for the people that are still alive and well, that were involved back then, because this is the other thing, that those actions, probably only really, most of those actions were carried out by a few dozen people, really. That's the other thing. So these people, the people that you're most likely to see, the ones that are alive and well now, you wouldn't guess, looking at them, they'll look middle-aged, and they'll be serving you in the whole food shops, the vegan whole food shops, and they'll be helping you foster and taking your animals. They're helping you rehome an animal at the animal sanctuaries. That's the sort of places where a lot of the ex-ALF activists can be found. You might be getting served hummus over a deli counter, and the person there behind that deli counter is an ex-ALF activist. Who was responsible for some of the stuff that I've been going on about this episode. So I hope that, again, that's given you some food for thought. I'm sorry it's been such a very long episode. I hope it hasn't dragged out too much. So it just remains for me to say to you, take care, and thank you. Take care.
Vivisection may already have lost the argument with the next generation. At Graveney School in South London, animal rights are a frequent set topic for discussion. These 13 and 14-year-olds were drawn at random.
You've said some of you are vegetarians, some of you, or most of you, I think, buy cruelty-free products. But how far would any of you go beyond that? Mary?
I would like to go up to the actual scientists and try to get it through to them what they're doing is wrong, and that the majority of the population does not like it at all.